Okay, it's time to get started. We're going to do the Transit Trust meeting first. And at this time, I will call the City Transit Trust special meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Hankins. Harris. Chapman. Gill. Hampton. Fortenbaugh. Johnson. Warren.
Present. A quorum is established. We are going to deal with business item number 2 before we go into executive session. Discuss the future Lawton Area Transit System, LATS, Transfer Center Station, and Maintenance Facility, and take any action the trustees deem necessary. So we do have somebody that wants to speak. David Tyler, 501 Southwest 77th. I think that's what this says.
Yeah, I don't write very well.
So,
That good? Good. All right.
go.
I'll just start. The city promised the people that ride that bus a downtown transfer facility. They promised it to them as far back as 2014 to 2016. We're going to have a beautiful transfer, warm, air-conditioned, heating, bathrooms in there. We're going to build that. We're going to build that all the way up until just a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago. Then it's, well, we may build it down there, 13th and A. We'll build it down there. You will have to ride the bus there, then get off, get on another bus, ride it downtown, get off, do your thing, and then you're going to wait in those shelters down there, in the cold, in the heat, in the rain. You're going to wait down there because I'm not politically correct. The staff wants it down there. The people want it down there. And it's the people that this city, that this government has to answer to. You do not promise them year after year and kick the can down the road. You don't do that. That's not right. I asked last night at that meeting, I said, well, if 4th and A is chosen, from what I understand, by the end of June, it'll be raised and that property will be ready to start on the transfer facility. Oh no, we don't have the money. Well, hold it. Just a few months ago, Councilman and the mayor was asking when the funding was going to drop off for that. Now we don't have the money? No. The people want it down there. The staff isn't riding that bus every day. Seniors are. Parents are. Disabled are. We've got a Veterans Assistance Center now down there. Don't make them think you're going to lie to them. Thank you.
All right, is there anybody else that would like to come and speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on. I think some council members had some discussion about the transfer center and also the maintenance facility. So, council?
I think mainly what I would like to ask is that we have some kind of comprehensive understanding of cost, and in that understanding, I would hope that we finally have gotten to a place where we realize that we don't need, I think at one point it was called Grand Central Station. We need a facility that will serve the public with restrooms and a waiting area and some shelter to get on and off the transportation. Council, I had some pictures, but they weren't very good. I would encourage all of you to either visit their website or make a trip to Oklahoma City and look at the way that they handle their bus system in the city. The transfer station that they've got it's large because they're quite a bit bigger than we are. But basically, it's just some shelters that the buses can pull under that the people can get on and off. There's a centralized restroom waiting area, fairly small, and that's the transfer station. Their maintenance facility is located south of 40, between 40 and 240, I believe, right next to the FedEx shipping, where all the big FedEx trucks go. So it's in an industrial park. Basically, kind of like where ours is right now. We're located just a block from the UPS facility here in town. But I think it's important that we not try to build, I mean, we need it to be nice, we need it to be functional, but I don't think we need it to have retail and all those bells and whistles. I'd much rather see us spend money on that, and if we've got some extra money left over, let's build some shelters out along the routes.
Does anybody else have comments? And let's hold our comments, if we could, to the transfer center, and then we'll go to maintenance center if someone has comments there. Mr. Harris.
So, I want to agree with Councilman Warren. I actually did go to Oklahoma City and looked at the transfer center, and then I took pictures as well, Randy. They didn't come out any better than yours. But as I counted, there were 12 slots there, the same as what we're looking at. It does take up an entire block, but it's I mean, that's just because the buses need room to move. I thought the building itself, it was not very large. It had bathrooms, it had some vending machines, and I think it had a ticket booth to sell passes and something else. I don't, what else was up there, Randy? Anyway, I thought it was a perfect, it looked exactly like what we need, but it is a slightly bigger site.
Mr. Gill.
I like what Randy said also, but we need to be aware that we don't have a extra amount of money to spend on anything that we do, so we need to make it count. We don't have to have a maintenance section with the transfer station. Certainly something we want to look at, but if we can build a good transfer station and stay where we are with our maintenance, that'll work just fine. They really don't have to be together, and they serve no purpose to be together. Thank you.
I agree with Councilman Warren's, what he stated. I think that's fine. You know, a nice place for them to get in, and maybe some vending machines, and I think, you know, just it doesn't have to be some state-of-the-art thing at this point. We'll see later, whatever.
Mr. Fortenbaugh.
I agree with everything I just heard, and, you know, just to add to that, I'm personally frustrated that we've been talking about this for so many years, and we keep moving it around, and at the end of the day, we don't have enough information to even begin to make a decision on it. And we'll be talking about that later, but I agree, it doesn't need to be a Taj Mahal. We might have certain federal monies available for this, but we don't need to spend it all. We need to be responsible in everything that we do. A small facility, bathrooms, seating area, vending machines, sure. Adequate bus parking, I'm all for that. But we don't need a Starbucks in there.
Okay, anybody else on the transfer center? Mr. Hampton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm like Councilman Fortenbaugh. You know, it would be nice to have some conceptual drawing of what is actually in the mind of the people that are responsible for that transfer center. It seems like we've talked about a lot of locations, and in those locations, I really am having a difficult time envisioning actually what the whole conceptual drawing is of what this transfer station will look like, the size of it, and a number of details, which I'm sure we're going to get to that. But until I get to that, it's difficult for me to sometimes even consider the location. Thank you, Mayor.
Anything else on the transfer station? Was there any action desired? Okay. Do you
On
have
the,
action?
on the transfer station? Just dealing with the transfer station, based on what everybody said, I'd move that we direct staff to plan for an adequate bus parking, a small facility with the bathrooms, the seating areas, the vending machines, but put something, make a plan for that, figure out what it's going to cost, and draw it out for us so we can see what it looks like. That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a
second
second?
that
We have a second from Mr. Gill. Discussion or debate? Please vote.
Harris.
Yes.
Chapman. Gill.
Yes.
Hampton.
Yes.
Fortenbaugh. Warren. Hankins.
The motion carries. Now, this moves it, we're still on item 2. Now let's talk about maintenance facility, and I think Mr. Fortenbaugh was the one that wanted to talk about that.
In my mind, the maintenance facility plan is even worse off. We have a maintenance facility that we've been using since day one. I need more information. Is it adequate? If not, what does it need? I know it probably needs electricity upgrades. I actually don't like building this thing, the maintenance facility right next to the transfer station, because those are typically in an industrial area, not on a busy street. We need more information to make any kind of decision on that. What we have might be adequate, I don't know.
Well, what other information are you thinking?
We need to look at what we have and consider the options there. Okay, we need electricity. Well, let's figure out what it's going to take to upgrade that facility. Does it need additional infrastructure there? Does it need additional buildings? Let's figure out the cost of that, because I believe it's served us well for the last 20 years. And then let's look at, if we're going to do a new site, it's been 20 plus or minus years. If we need to look at a new site, let's learn about the location and what it needs, and what's the cost going to be to build a brand-new state-of-the-art maintenance facility, and where should it be?
You know, from a real estate investment point of view, we can't make the decision unless we know what it's going to cost to stay where we are. Do we know that? Do we know what it's going to cost to stay where we are?
You talking about the maintenance facility?
Yeah.
Where it is now? Well, it's Charlotte.
We don't have that number, but I can tell you that, I can tell you that the federal government typically does not give funding to remodel property that we would not own. The federal government wouldn't provide us with any money to remodel and to upgrade that facility because we don't own it.
Is that for sale, or do we know?
We would have to reach out to the property owner and see if he'd be willing to sell it. He has almost that whole corner down there, and we just have a small piece.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
Charlotte, we're leasing that property now, right?
Yes, $6,000 a month is the lease.
That was going to be my question. Thank you.
I was just going to say that the landowner can also do lease improvements, work out a lease and have the things done. If we have new requirements, the landowner can do that, and we'll just increase or decrease our rent if we could work out an appropriate rent. Certainly would be, as Mr. Fortenbaugh said, it'd be a lot less money spent if we're leasing something out like that. Therefore, we'll have money to spend on the transfer center if, in fact, we're running low there. Absolutely, I don't see any reason at all to have them together, and I think we could save money, but we'll look at that. Thank you.
Mr. Harris?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Charlotte, so the facility we have now is totally inadequate for electric buses, is that correct?
Yes, it's too small, and we've actually outgrown it. We're in the process of getting Connex boxes to hold additional storage, and the new electric buses are a good 5 to 10 feet longer than our existing buses, so they won't fit into the maintenance phase.
So it's actually inadequate site if we move to electric buses, but if we stayed with diesel buses, it would be okay.
Yes, but the federal government's infrastructure bill has grant funding opportunities, and they've signed into law for us to move to zero emission by 2035, which means that we have to go away from diesel buses. Ford and the other bus groups that are designing buses are going away from making the combustible engine buses at the time.
And so the advantages of having, although I understand Councilman Fortenball's concern, the advantages of having the transfer site and the maintenance site together are what?
So part of it is, and I'll let Ryan speak to some of it, but part of it's, there's no deadhead miles, so they would literally just be right there to park the bus instead of having to go back down to the maintenance facility to charge at night.
So all the employees would be able to park in the same place, and the maintenance facility, as I understand it, is not like a normal garage for a diesel bus, because the electric buses the maintenance on them is completely different
Yes.
than it is for diesel buses.
Yes.
So we'd be paying for our own investment. We'd invest our money in our own property, and we would not be paying lease payments any further.
Correct.
Thank you.
So I wonder if we could get specifics on what it is that makes it inadequate and not adaptable. Could we get, I don't mean you have to give it to me right now, but,
We can put together that information for you.
okay. And would you pull that microphone closer to you?
I'm sorry.
Maybe even closer,
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay.
okay? Yeah. Okay, we'll try that,
Okay.
okay? Were there, oh, Mr. Warren?
And I just wanted to touch, I hear the frustration in the citizens, some council members, myself. It seems like a lot of this, we've got the cart before the horse. Part of what you're going to have to know when you make a financial decision about where you're going to locate something is your infrastructure needs. It's my understanding that PSO has the ability to tell us maybe this location X, has more than likely has enough power because it's got a huge amount. But PSO evidently can't tell us anything until we tell them what load we're going to need.
So
And if we don't,
have been working with PSO, and we actually gave them the list of the 18 sites that we presented to the subcommittee, and they came back on a virtual meeting with us after looking at those to give us the locations that would work operationally for them. Now, we realize that there's
but
probably additional power.
have we
that
ever,
have to be-
have we ever told them what the load requirement was?
They have the load requirement, the proposed load requirement that was provided by Kimley Horn, who is doing our zero emission bus study, like a year ago. They were given that information.
I recently spoke to a PSO representative that it was his understanding that all we had ever provided them was the load requirement for one test unit. So I don't know how we can make any kind of decision if we're relying on PSO to tell us how much electricity we need if we can't tell them how much we're requiring.
And I don't know, unfortunately, I wasn't there, when all this started, so I don't know exactly what was provided. I just know that when we met with them, PSO said that they were going based off what they had been given by staff from Kimley Horn.
I guess what I'm trying to say is it appears that part of the problem with this has been all along, and there's no blame anywhere. It's simply the fact that anytime you try to build something or to construct something, you have to know, before you make your decisions, you have to know what your infrastructure is going to cost, what your property is going to cost. You can't just find some cheap property and hope that the electricity is going to be adequate, because then you might find out that it would have been better to pay more for some different piece of property that had better access to electricity. So you have to have all that information. And if we don't have that information, I don't know how we can make any kind of decision.
Okay, Mr. Harris.
That's great. I agree with Councilman Warren again. That's really unusual, twice in one meeting. But so it was my understanding in previous communications that whatever property we have, we could leverage against the 80% that the federal government would provide. So as opposed to us paying $700,000 per diesel bus out of our own pocket, we could get 80% matched on the electric buses, plus the transfer center, plus the maintenance center. So in essence, we could come out of this for far less money than it would be if we try to go it our own without the federal government's.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so what is the cost estimate for the maintenance and administrative?
I don't believe we have that.
So I've heard it before. Would you come up and tell us, Ryan?
So the average cost or the estimated cost for maintenance? In all honesty, it just depends on the size that we're actually wanting, and depending on how much federal dollars we get for said facility, that's going to make a big difference.
Okay, so I think what I'm worried about, and I think I hear that sum up here, we have $2.5 million in the CIP. Now, we expect to bring in some more CIP money due to inflation, so that number would correspondingly be expected to increase. But in our minds, let's say it's $3.5 million. How much is this transfer facility going to cost us?
So the estimation from 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was about 1.5, 2 million, give or take. But that was just the transfer center.
And are you expecting to receive 80% of that back from federal government?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say that's 3.5 now. So you're not going to use a big chunk of it. You're going to use 20% of that. Now, what is your cost estimate for the maintenance and administrative facility? Assuming we own the land.
Assuming we own the land, depending on the value of the land, again, using that as leverage, I'm not sure if you would get the full 20% out of it, but you have to figure that it's probably between 10 and 15 million, depending on.
How many?
10 and 15 million.
So we know from experience it's not the low side. Never is.
Yeah.
So you take the 15 million and you don't think you're going to get you don't think you'll get 80% of it, right?
No, you would get 80%.
You would get 80%.
And one of the big keys that we have to kind of look at is that about 4 or 5 years ago, when we were looking at land and going after a transfer center, there weren't a whole lot of federal dollars to actually go after. We were basically competing with the New York Cities, the Californias, all of that kind of good stuff. And now with the infrastructure bill, yes, we're still competing, but we have a much better, I guess I wouldn't call it a plan, but much better percentage that we're going to actually get those funds. Now, again, we can't start building, we can't do anything until we actually have the federal dollars in hand. And so if, we're not going to have $10 million next year. It's going to come in phases. And I think that's one of the biggest things is that you build this in phases. You do this correctly over the next 3 to 5 years. And I think if you do that, there's more funding, more local match that we can actually find, whether it's outside of the CIP. I think those are some of the things that we can start looking at. The CIP helps, absolutely, but I understand you can't just throw $2.5 million right from the get-go type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think as a citizen, my concern is that I've seen how this works. We get into this, and then none of us are up here when this finally comes to play, and we just run through, and that's not what that's not what we told the citizens on the CIP. Mm-hmm. Certainly adjusted for inflation, everybody understands. And then we go over, and so that doesn't look good, and it hurts trust. And so what I want to know, and I've said this before, is what's the exit plan if it comes in, if we don't get the grant that we hope for?
Well, I think the simplest answer to that is if we don't get the money, we can't do anything. I mean, even if we had a plan for the next 5 years and said, here's our concept, here's what we're doing, if we don't have the funds to do it, then, we have to reorganize and see what the next step is.
So I'm going to want I'm just going to tell you, if we get down to voting on this, I'm going to want that in the motion, that if the money doesn't come in, we're not going to do it, okay? Thank you. Yes, Mr. Gill.
Did I hear you say 12 or 15 million on both facilities together?
Again, that's just an estimate.
Well, we're looking at 2.5 or say 3.5 for the transfer station itself, so you're looking at a $10 million maintenance facility?
Again, that's just an estimate.
But even an estimate, that's pretty high.
It could be. Again, depending on when we get into the design.
Especially if we can lease something, well, we could have had a long time and not even get close to that kind of money.
So one of the issues and what Charlotte had brought up is that you're not going to get federal dollars to try to expand a property that you don't own.
Well, I understand
Yeah.
that.
And that's the problem, is right now, we don't have enough space to do our current operation. The other thing that we have to look at is that, and I've mentioned this, I guess, on a couple of.
And another thing I want to bring up, I know we're talking about electric and electric buses in 2035, but the way the electric vehicle market is going right now, it may not be such in 2035. There's a lot of companies that have stopped production. Sales are way low across the country. So this is just something we have to think about also. Spend all this money, do all this work, build all these buildings for electric, and then electric isn't going to be the thing of the future.
Now, electric's not the only thing, but we are looking at hybrid versions of this, and again, that's all part of the zero emission study that we need.
I just wanted to make that note about electric. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Yes. So, Ryan, it was my understanding there's also $600 million in state money that is available as well. Is that correct? Or some?
Yeah, it's 66 million.
66 million. I was factor 10. What's
That- yeah.
500 million amongst friends?
Fair enough.
But once again, the federal government has mandated that by 2035, we will be EV or
We need to be starting to move towards
non-emission, zero emission.
Yes.
All right.
So one of the grants that is out there, it's what's called the Low and Zero Emission Grant. And so 75% of that grant has to be zero emissions in there, which means electric or hydrogen fuel cell or anything like that. But there's also 25% of that that can be used for a hybrid version of it, to where if your transition plan that we have to work on, if that is your plan to where you are buying vehicles and eventually starting that process, then the federal government will be more inclined to actually give you buses, because that's the way the industry is going.
I hate to throw confusement into the mix, as Jim Branscombe used to say, but so is there then the possibility we could have hybrid maintenance facility? We have one that's for the diesel and a smaller one that would serve as we transition. That might be expandable in the future.
The easiest answer to that is, I think once we start building, I think we're going to have half of our fleet that's still going to be diesel at that particular time. We're only going to be in the process of replacing half of our fleet over the next three years, which is absolutely needed because they're past their useful life at this point.
So it would make sense for us to have a site that we could expand. It would make sense for us to have a site that we could expand then.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Portenbaugh?
I have a motion, Mayor,
Yes, sir.
or Mr. Chairman. Motions to direct staff, there's three key things we need to happen. One, we've got to figure out the load required if, assuming we had an all-electric bus barn. And that could be at any of the sites we're looking at, including the one we have right now. And get that to the PSO rep, whoever he is, and then he can tell us what it's going to cost. Okay. The second part of the motion is we need to approach the current owner of our bus barn and talk to them if we can negotiate a long-term lease with them, the terms of that, or maybe even a lease purchase option where we could actually own that facility and thereby use the federal funds for that. And finally, we need a contingency plan. If the money goes away, then we may not be able to do this project, and that needs to be kind of clearly stated. There's a trigger for that. They take the money, we can't do it.
Okay, so we have a motion, let's see if I've got that. Figure out the load at all, was that all sites? And get to the rep, the PSO rep, and get the cost associated. Approach the owner for long-term lease options and lease purchase options?
Yes.
Is that right? What
Yes.
about just purchase, straight-out purchase option?
Sure.
Okay,
All
we'll
the
put
above.
that in there too. And a contingency plan if the money goes away. Is there a second? Second. Did I get that right?
You did.
Okay, and we got a second right here. Discussion or debate?
Mayor, I want to say something real quick.
Yes.
You know, in making any type of a sound decision, options are always important. I think that you set an option, maybe have a contingency option or something like that. So any other options that you may think of being in the position you are, adding to that might be good.
Mayor,
Yes.
Ryan, I know you can't look into the future, but with all of this discussion, what would happen if all of a sudden this 2035 requirement was rescinded or changed? I mean, where does that put us also financially?
So I think the easiest answer to that is yes. Any type of plan can absolutely be rescinded. Technologies can absolutely change over the next years. I think before we start looking at the future, and I think the future is very important, we need to absolutely start looking at the next couple of years. I've mentioned on a number of occasions our current fleet is deteriorating, and it's not going to withstand the next 3 to 5 years. There's going to be more maintenance costs, so that means that our yearly budget is going to absolutely increase, and that is a concern of mine. The more and more that I foresee the industry actually going is, yes, alternative energies is absolutely where it is going. Whether it is electric, whether it is hydrogen fuel cell, that's where the industry is going. Environmental issues are a big concern with our industry. And so I guess the simple answer, I don't foresee this actually going away. I do think it's going to start to expand. Infrastructure is going to be a key to electric working or any other technology working. And it's just going to take some time, but I do believe that it is going towards that. I think it is a bipartisan issue. I think a lot of people can get onto this because it is the way.
City Manager.
Mayor and Council, Mayor, I think you were there. DC Fly-In, the year that before this, we had a conversation with Senator Lankford, or maybe it was here at Lawton. I can't remember exactly the place, but currently there's only 1% of the fleet or the vehicles in America are electric vehicles. Less than 1% are electric vehicles. And I say that because I think it's important that we put in context the number of vehicles on the roads that are powered by internal combustion engines versus electric vehicles. And one other statement is, I've been in this game for a while, when you talk about alternative fuel source vehicles, for example, CNG garbage trucks, okay, or hydrogen-powered garbage trucks, or things along that way. And they're very similar in the technology that would run a bus. In some of those facilities, they require specific maintenance enclosures to handle those type of facilities. So I would like to know if it's an all-electric bus with lithium batteries or whatever the current technology is there a requirement to have a specific maintenance facility to handle that type of vehicle? Because they do catch on fire, as we do know, and that's a concern in the area of maintenance. And then what sort of special technical training would the maintenance techs be required to have to maintain those buses? I think that needs to be added to the conversation that we're talking about, because we can build it, we can equip it, and we can buy it, but if we can't maintain it, we can't maintain it. So.
Good points all. Mr. Fortenbaugh.
I would like to accept his comments as a friendly amendment to my original motion.
We have a friendly amendment. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Let's
I've
do
got
it.
one more
Oh,
quick.
Mr. Harris.
Councilman Fortenbaugh, did I understand the motion to open up all the sites we've looked at, or just the three that we're looking at now?
I'm thinking mainly of the three we're looking at now and the one we have.
Thank you.
already.
Okay, let's vote.
Chapman? Gill?
Yes.
Hampton? Fortenbaugh? Johnson? Warren? Hankins? Harris?
Yes.
Motion carries. Is there any other discussion or action on item number 2? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to go into executive session and deal with item number 1? So a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Gill?
Yes.
Hampton? Fortenbaugh? Johnson? Warren? Hankins? Harris? Chapman?
Okay, we'll make this as quick as we can, and I'm wondering if we can get somebody to work on the sound from the podium while we're gone. The sound up here is awesome. It's perfect. Back to great. Please mark those spots on everything.